I was thinking about where does ego come from in an INTP, but thinking about it from a cognitive function standpoint. And I was debating between TI and FE. And I probably think that FE is the culprit here, and I will try to explain it in this video, just as a fun discussion, nothing serious or actually true. The reason I excluded TI as the reason or the origin of the ego in an INTP is mainly due to 2 points that I can possibly think of right now. The first one is that TI is more interested in the how and not the what. As an INTP, you're not interested in your positions, in what you think about specific topics, but more so at how you arrive at those conclusions. You've probably heard it already in forums posts or maybe in other YouTube videos that TI is more a logic function in the sense that is more interested in how you think about something and not what you're thinking of. And obviously, as a TI user myself, for me, that reasoning and that logic is important. So you could say as a counter argument that there lies the ego of an INTP, because if you push and pull and try to poke on that logic, and if your critiques are sound and are seen as true from the INTP side, you're obviously going to get a reaction from said INTP. But at least from my point of view, in those cases, even though it can be hard, an INTP, if he or she identifies a counter argument as true, having a better reasoning chain will inevitably change his or her own point of view, will incorporate part of this other view in his own mental framework. We could jokingly say that there are no human emotions involved in this process. An INTP may seem angry or his state of mind may seem alterated, but there isn't that, at least in the long run, anxiety, fear that maybe you will find in FI types, but I may be wrong in this, because your focus is more on the process itself, is more so on the logic used in your day-to-day life. And if that counter argument makes sense to you, you have no other reason than to accept it. In other terms, once you see it, you cannot unsee it. So you're not interested in who's the winner or the loser of that argument, but what makes most sense. Obviously, as an aside, what we mean by ego is very imprecise and very nebulous. In this case, I think I'm trying to identify it and define it more as the source of importance of self. What makes you competitive? What are those situations in which the competitiveness in you is rekindled? What makes you enter that win or lose mentality? In which circumstances do you feel attacked, as if your persona, or better your worth as a person, is attacked and is in danger? What are those situations in which you feel you have to justify yourself, and so on? And at least for me, this more so comes from FE. This fear and uncertainty, anxiety, all these quotes human emotions come mainly from FE. And I'm going to try to explain why. And I'm going to use maybe the two extremes, positive and negative, of FE, or of a real life context example of day-to-day life in which FE has its impact. So on the good end, we have a situation, a context in which you are with people with which you feel at ease and you like to spend time with. You don't feel like you need to demonstrate nothing and to show your self-worth by showing your capabilities. In the case of an INTP, generally speaking, this is an intellectual capability, so the ability to think, and in general, we could say being intelligent. And at least for me, when I'm in those situations, when I'm with those people, I feel as if I'm not judged. My head is very light-weighted. I don't have nothing to prove. But let's take the opposite example, and I think that this is paradigmatic for how FE can be the source of the ego of an INTP, even though this may seem as the doing of TI, and that is when you're with people by which you feel attacked by. And some of these may have habits and way of acting that people may define as, nowadays, quotes, toxic. There are people that seem to have such low self-esteem that they always have to demonstrate how good they are as a person, how intelligent they are. And with these people, everything is a competition, even if it doesn't seem so in the first place. They're very good at masquerading competition. And they're so used to it that you find yourself sometimes as an FE user getting involved in said competition without your will. And this removes joy from your day-to-day experience. You're less happy when this happens. And the reason why I was thinking that TI may be a source of ego is that I was precisely thinking about these situations. I thought to myself, well, there are situations in which with specific people, I tend to want to demonstrate that I'm capable, that I'm intelligent, that I'm able to think. And also I've read around, and this seems to be true to myself, that INTP give a lot of importance in feeling and being competent. So I was like, obviously that's TI. But then I thought about it more and realized that this only happens with specific people. And with these people, I think that FE tries to find harmony by coming to terms with the game that's being played. So if the other person wants to show to you or to the group how good they are and how intelligent they are, your FE feels attacked. There is no longer harmony around you. This other person is attacking and imbalancing said harmony. And so you instinctively, without thinking about it, as a reaction, try to balance out and try to face this opposite energy to try and reestablish the harmony you had beforehand. And that's why you enter this competition. You try to demonstrate that you're worth. And that may seem as sort of a defense of oneself, of one's ego via TI. But as said, TI is more interested in the how. And it's actually maybe detached from the other human elements. Obviously, this is a metaphor. Everything is human and is all part of your experience. But it seems as if TI is merely prefrontal cortex activity at the unknown of every emotion that you can have, completely detached from it. So as I was saying, I think that is more so FE that's trying to find harmony in these circumstances, because if you show the other person that you're actually more capable than them, then generally speaking, that person will not bother you and bother other people, or at least it will bother you in other ways and always try to find, let's say, a competition, but at that point, you sort of feel like you've won the important battle or you've won the war actually. So they may initiate little battles that are, at your eyes, of no importance or hold no importance. And this all may seem as a classic INTP mental jerking off, but it's actually something I've seen myself with these types of people, especially when you're in, let's say, academic contexts that tend to attract a lot of these peculiar personalities. Let's describe it as that. And I've seen that once you've actually imposed your dominance, or better, once you've defended yourself from their attack, generally speaking, they will leave you be. And they probably will be frustrated with you and the fact that you were able to be more competent than them in the only game they're able to play and the only game they know how to play. Obviously, it frustrates them and it's a source of anger in them. You've established, I don't like to use this word, but your dominance towards that person, your competence as a person. And from that comes harmony, because that person will no longer theoretically bother you. Therefore, your normal equilibrium is reestablished. And that's why basically I think that FE is the source of uncertainty, ego, use the word that you want. I think in this case, the specific word isn't important, but it's more so important to know the feeling or what I'm referring to. And I made some statements, examples before in the video, in the initial part, sort of to give a vague and rapid description of, let's say, ego. I probably could expand more and go into depth with this and trying to analyze it more, but that's not something I like to do. Once I have an idea, I try to explore it very briefly, and if it makes sort of sense, I just end it there and pass on to something else. So let me know your ideas in the comments and see you in the next video.